how do you help people figure out whether it's the emotions that have it wrong and the intellect has it right, or vice versa, or maybe they both got it a little bit wrong and a little bit right? How do you help them figure out which of those it is and how to bring them in alignment?
So there's a set of questionnaires, a questionnaire that I have my mentees read and answer. And these are questions that I've discovered from reading the great minds and studying the greatest minds of psychology, psychiatry, spirituality, even theology. I mean, I've researched it all. And so I took the best of those processes and I combined them all through my framework in order to identify where a person's intellect clashing with their emotions and what they believe in.
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible. Hey everybody, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast. I have a nice friend of mine and just a really exciting person to talk to, Claudia Lorant. I went through, just in prepping for this, I was born in Cali, Colombia, but you've been a TV host, a reality TV guest twice, maybe more, at least twice I know of, music industry executive, marketing executive, cybersecurity executive, author, speaker, and I know you've also got some new projects. I don't want to out them, so I'll let you decide if you want to talk about those or not. But I wanted to, did I get everything? I think I got most of it.
You got pretty much all of it.
Okay. So I wanted to...
and entrepreneur.
And entrepreneur. I feel like that's all baked in here somewhere.
Right?
So I just wanted to go sort of way back. You were born in Cali, Colombia, maybe sort of talk about just, sort of high level, kind of how you got to maybe start, getting to the States and kind of getting your career started.
So interestingly enough, my father was the youngest appointed head of the Departamento Administrativo de Seguridad, which is the equivalent of the Secret Service. Now, he was shot in an assassination attempt of the president, saved the president's life, so there was a hit put on my father. I was 10 months old, and my mother refused to allow her daughter to be kidnapped or anything bad to happen. I do have two older brothers, but my father wanted them to follow in his footsteps. So what ended up happening is we had to leave the country, and the United States government bequeathed upon my family permanent legal resident status. And then my father came into the United States, ended up being debriefed in Langley, trained in Quantico, and was placed undercover working for a 3-letter agency. Well, he's now gone, and most of the people that wanted him dead are also gone, so I can talk about it freely. Right. But he was worked with the DEA.
Got it.
So that's kind of like the cybersecurity in me. I wanted to follow his legacy in fighting crime, but I didn't want to put my life in the line, so I went into cyber. So that's how that happened.
Got it. And so at some point, though, because I think you started out, if I have the sequencing right, you started out doing stuff maybe in the music industry first?
Yes. So originally I started a company called Quantum Omni Vision Media Group. And I was an international consultant, and I helped develop projects. And that led me to an audition, which I went at 33 to audition for a video that Pastorini Bosley, the agency I was with in Houston, had submitted me for. But it was actually a music video. So when I went into audition for this music video, of course, I was 33. Now, I had already made my first million when I was 27. So for me, I kind of thought I was too old, but I looked really young. So before they wanted me to dance in the video, I'm like, no, let me listen to the music so I can feel it. Because if I'm not into the music, I'm not going to do this. And they're like, well, aren't you confident? And I'm like, well, yeah, you want me, so let's see what you have to offer me. And so they played the song, and it was a song that was it was the beat was reggaeton, but all of the lyrics were in English, and it just had no part of that Latino. So I just told them, I said, I'm sorry, but I can't audition for you because I don't think this is really a reggaeton song. And they felt like the audacity. Well, what would you do? And so I just started like play it again, beating and humming. And I'm like, right here, you need to do this. And I just ad-lib. And they're like, okay, that's perfect. Put it on the record. So they literally, my first time in the studio, I improvised everything. They cut it, they edited it. And I took that with me when I went to audition for the Wilhelmina Modeling Agency in New York, but it was for the commercial acting workshop or division. So I took that with me and I went knocking on doors and I hit all the major recording studios. And I was called back by Universal Latino in Miami. And so they offered me a one-year contract for $1 million, Sony Latino, if I would develop my talents as a reggaeton artist. And so I started looking into it. And what I realized is that at my age, I wasn't going to sign a 3-year contract for $1 million. If it was $1 million for 1 year, maybe. But at 33, I was like, you know what? No, this is not working out for me because I realized that in order for me to launch my career in reggaeton, I would have to go perform at all kinds of nightclubs and, you know, where you have to go in through metal detectors. And I just was intimidated by that. And I was like, you know, but what I did was I studied everything about the music industry. And I actually became a voting member of the Latin Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences. I created my own music management company. And then I went to Colombia to promote talent from my country. And I discovered this band called Grupo Locales. What I ended up doing there was I put together an intercultural exchange with the United States, actually specifically the Special Office of Special Events from under Mayor Bill White in Houston, Texas. And that was the year, 2009 and 10, that the Latin Grammys came to perform in Houston for the first time ever. So what I did was I managed to coordinate getting visas, 8 visas, because I aligned my company, Omnivision Music Group, OMG, the acronym, because I'm a total dork. So I am in self-deprecating as well, but I put together the intercultural exchange, and I had the entire band come to the United States, and they performed at 3 official events for the Latin Grammys, and that was my level of success. But then the band, they just got too big for their own britches, and they thought that they could do without me. And I said, okay, well, I cut you off. No more funding. You're on your own. And they collapsed and failed, but not before they burned me and stole some equipment. Right. So I got burnt. And at that point, I saw that the industry was changing and that the streaming services were coming in. And I couldn't wrap my mind around that at that time. So I switched and I went back. Well, I went into cybersecurity, a complete 180. Right. But that was my experience. So I seem like when I follow my heart, I feel like I'm extremely successful and extremely blessed. And that's really after 24 years of research in quantum physics, quantum entanglement, duality, neuroplasticity, epigenetics, and positive psychology. I've taken the best from all those modalities and I've put it in a framework that's a proprietary framework that I created called the Quantum Omni Mindset. And it's an amazing framework where I guide people with the roadmap and I mentor them into evolving beyond the realm of the multi-sensory perceptive society, which is something that through psychology we've evolved into from the 5-sensory perceptive society.
Well, hold on, but I want to get into the Quantum Omni Mindset, but I want to try to dumb it down a little bit, if you don't mind. Absolutely. So when I was reading through your content, and I want you to help me. I think I understand it, but maybe you can help me, and if you can help me, then you'll be able to help my listeners. That it's sort of the trying to align, and look, you've clearly reinvented yourself a whole bunch of times, throughout your life. Career is like all over the place, like from the music and entertainment industry to cybersecurity. You don't exactly look like a cybersecurity
entrepreneurial mindset.
Yeah. But it's the alignment of the conscious, the unconscious, and what you refer to as the divine frequency.
Yes.
So help me understand what you mean by the divine frequency, and then maybe talk a little bit about what you mean by the alignment of those 3 pillars. Yeah.
So divine frequency is known in terms of evolving your consciousness, evolving your spirit, and evolving your intellect. Divine frequency is the universal frequency of energy that is connected to that which is divine. So some people call it God, Muhammad, Jehovah, Allah, whatever you want to call him. We all have an understanding that there's, well, except for atheists, that there's a greater power that unites us all. It's that thread that connects us all. And that is the energy that pumps blood through our heart. It's the energy that is deep within us that some people call instinct. Some people call it the felt sense. Some people call it consciousness. Some people call it the Holy Spirit. But that divine frequency is unequivocally agreed upon.
That helps a lot. So now talk to me about what's the process that you take people through to help them align kind of that higher power energy or whatever you want to refer to it to, and the conscious and the unconscious.
Okay. So it's actually very simple. If you understand the process, then you can customize it and apply it to your own life. So that's the framework that I've created. And basically, if you want to know the process itself, what I did to achieve this was I read. I love to read, and I thirst for knowledge. So I have a list of books that people can read that have helped me to develop this ability to connect my conscious and subconscious minds to divine frequency. And that basically starts with meditation. And when I first started meditating, I really went in deep into studying it. As a matter of fact, I achieved a meditation mastery certification from the Masters of Meditation. So I've learned from the masters. And basically what I found out is I do have severe ADD and I am severely dyslexic. So I've struggled with that all of my life, but I've always been able to excel because of my faith. My faith in my ability to evolve in alignment with that which is divine. Because since God doesn't make mistakes, and I happen to call God the divine creator, and that has been a huge, huge paradigm shift in my understanding that people's perception of God is on religion. My perception of God is not about religion. In fact, religion was created by the few to control the masses. And in no other name in human history have more people died and suffered than in the name of religion. So for me, it's not about religion. It's about developing a personal relationship with that which is divine. That divine frequency that has been researched and studied and documented as being the energy of frequency that aligns with God.
So how do you personally get in touch with that frequency, and how do you guide others to do that?
Oh my gosh. So every single day, the moment I wake up, the moment I am consciously awakened from a subconscious mind wave, right? When you're asleep, you're in beta and theta and mega. Your brain waves tap into automatically as your conscious mind turns off, your subconscious kicks in, okay? So every morning when I wake up, the moment that I open my eyes, I give gratitude for being alive. That's just very simple. Like I live in an attitude of gratitude, and I think that's where it all starts, is waking up and giving grace and giving gratitude for the blessings that we do have. So I already have switched that paradigm in my mind, which may be sometimes insecure. Maybe it's, I've got these responsibilities and I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. But the fact that I have faith, the fact that I connect to my subconscious minds in those early stages when you're transitioning from your subconscious mind of sleep and dreaming into your conscious mind of living, I guide my subconscious mind and my conscious mind in alignment. And I ask very simply and give thanks to the divine creator, the creator of all that is divine, in alignment, for bringing me in alignment, for giving me the opportunity to have that knowledge. And then I pre-program and set my intentions for the day. So every single day, that's how I start my day, and it's how I end my day. So at night, it shifts. My gratitude, my attitude of gratitude shifts from setting my intentions for my day as I consciously live to setting my intentions subconsciously as I sleep to pre-program my conscious mind in alignment so that I can subconsciously program my conscious mind. So there is a process. It's been proven. I mean, Earl Nightingale, Napoleon Hill, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Dr. DeMartini, Jesus, even Dr. Joe Dispenza. These are proven techniques that we can implement in our lives. I just happen to have worded it differently through the Quantum Omni Mindset, which is the framework that includes your vision, your intuition, and your perspective. And to be able to align those three aspects of your human personality characteristic traits, which we all have, that's what allows you to achieve that alignment. And once you understand that process, which is the framework that I've created, proprietary framework that I've created, and then my books, of course, because I've written a series of books to explain the process that are called the Quantum Omni Mindset. And I actually wrote more recently and launched the 10 Secrets to the Quantum Omni Mindset, which the acronym QOM is QOM, QOM, QOM. So the QOM mindset can be achieved by following these 10 secrets, because I realized that I needed to communicate it in layman terms. For me, it's very simple to understand what I'm talking about because I've been studying it for 24 years.
Sure.
But not very many people even know about these concepts. So it's about being able to communicate it in a way where you're just teaching people a roadmap of how to align your subconscious and your conscious minds with that universal intelligence and divine frequency, which are actually two different things, but right now we're sticking with divine frequency. I don't want to overload people with information.
Well, so let's say you have someone that you're coaching, and they're wanting to transform themselves, reinvent themselves. How do you take me through what that process looks like? Because I think that might be helpful.
So I start by giving them my book, The
Right.
10 Secrets to Attaining the Quam, so that they understand the basic process of what it means in very layman's terms, right? So you need to be able to communicate. So I start with that. I start by questioning what level of knowledge do they have with reference to quantum physics, to consciousness, to spirituality, and at what level are they intellectually not just mature, but intelligent? And there's a huge dynamic that I've realized in mentoring people in my case studies that I've come to the realization because I've done the work of studying people and getting them to transform. It's been that a lot of people understand what emotional maturity is, but very few understand what emotional intelligence is. And there's a difference. You can be emotionally mature, and most older people believe that they are, and I get that. But that doesn't mean they're emotionally intelligent. And intelligence comes through wisdom and experience. Because you can be mature through experience, but not have the wisdom to go along with it. So when you start dissecting the processes, for me, it's understanding the thinking process and the metacognition, speaking in scientific terms or philosophical terms, to understanding the thinking processes of my mentee or my client that I'm helping to switch their paradigm into a more evolved level of conscious and subconscious understanding.
So maybe take me through an example of a client, maybe a challenging client, right?
Okay.
Who, because like you said, it sounds like you're evaluating them on a whole bunch of different, levels, perspectives. And then from that, you're sort of custom designing kind of what they need to be able to, I'm assuming, get to some base level
Yes.
of sort of knowledge to be able to take the next step.
Right, absolutely. So, okay, like the first mentee that comes to mind, an older lady, over 70, who was having serious problems with her daughter. Now, her daughter is the complete opposite, of her mother. Although the mother instilled in her the amazing principles of integrity and dignity and honor and self-respect and treating others the way you want to be treated. And those are essential qualities for humanity, right? So we can all agree with that. But she was so adamant that she was right and that everything she said was right, that she didn't have any available energy to actually sit down and go, okay, I know what's right for me, but my daughter grew up in a different generation that's more evolved. So maybe just because she's younger, I know what I instilled in her. So maybe I should trust what she has to say. And so the biggest struggle that I had with her was shifting her paradigm shift in the way she thought. Because what I've come to the realization through my research is that a lot of older people that were brought up in a previous generation, such as myself. I mean, I'm going to be 58 this year, so it's not like I'm a spring chicken, right? But I've adapted and I've evolved because of my thirst for knowledge and my desire to learn and be a better human being, leave this world a better place than what I encountered it. And you see, I chose not to have children because of my past traumas. And so for me, it's about helping people to understand. And what I was able to accomplish with this mentee and her daughter was to give them a brighter understanding, a broader understanding through the paradigm shift into the Quantum Omni Mindset and that framework. So I taught them, I taught them the roadmap, which is how you attain a paradigm shift into a more evolved understanding of the thinking processes, how people think. The baseline is, unless you understand the thinking processes of people and how to communicate, you're pretty much going to be lost, because you're either going to be you're going to have presumptions or assume that you understand how people think predicated upon the way you think. Right. It's when you choose to shift intellectually and spiritually and emotionally that you understand how you're capable of identifying how other people, that process that they use to digest information. Right. And so that was the most difficult case for me, because of the mindset that the mother had, where she would just, some people, they're right. And because that's what they were taught, their generation instilled in them that this is the right way to think and this is what makes you a better person. This is what makes you excel. When in reality, you only hold the knowledge that your generation gave to you to the extent that you chose to evolve that.
Right.
Right? And so as humanity evolves, every single generation takes the good from the previous generation and improves upon it. So obviously humanity evolves. And on that note, just one thing that came to mind is you've heard the saying, there is nothing more constant than change, right?
True.
That a very common saying. Well, I believe that I'm a catalyst in evolving that saying, because that is what is right for our previous generation. But what I've identified through my research is that people can change for the betterment of their own lives and humanity, or they can change in the negative. So change, it's not about there being nothing more constant than change. It's about there's nothing more constant than evolution and evolving. Because when you evolve, you improve.
What do you think causes somebody to, change or evolve in a positive way versus a negative way? What are the ingredients you think that make it go one way or the other?
The fact that they have not identified that their thinking process, the modality which they implement in order to think, the way they think is stuck on a pattern that was pre-programmed into their mindsets by their family, by their environment, by their circumstances. Children are born so open and so in alignment with divine frequency because they're innocent and they believe that anything is possible. It's the download, it's the pre-programming that their parents' mentalities created and formed with the limited knowledge that, they're going to change, but they only know how to change to the extent that they were taught how to. So let me explain it simpler.
But don't you think this? So if you have parents, let's say as an example, right? Mm-hmm. You might have two children that have the same, say, alcoholic father as an example. Mm-hmm. And one might become an alcoholic themselves and the other one might become a teetotaler and never touch alcohol. Mm-hmm. They grew up in the same environment. They had the same father. Yet one went one direction, one went the other direction. They were, one would argue, given that they had the same household, they were taught the same way to think, but they think differently.
Thank you very much. It's a very profound question, and it's easily explained by this. We are all born with a God-given right, and it's the free agency to choose, correct? So even though you're brought up in the same environment as your sibling, the dynamics of the personal relationship that he formed with with the same parents is a completely different relationship than the dynamics of the way you were brought up and the experiences that you took because of your free agency to choose how you wanted to digest that same information. Mm. So you can come from the same environment and have completely opposing bipolar opinions or modalities of living because you have the free agency to choose. And you've chose for yourself, predicated upon the pre-programming that your parents instilled in you, and how much was your desire to not just change, but to evolve. So when you change, you can change for the negative or you can change for the positive because you have the free agency to choose. God-given right. But it all depends on your attitude. It depends on how well you choose to study how people think and what causes you to think and make the choices that you. So it all starts within yourself first, and understanding that an attitude of gratitude, being grateful for what you have, and actually believing blindly. When you believe, when you align your conscious and subconscious minds, and you have that inherent instinct, that thought in your mind, that was implanted by the divine creator to show you what you're capable of. Your personality characteristic traits are what decide whether you're going to allow your attitude of insecurity, your attitude of feeling overwhelmed, your attitude of having anxiety, whether you allow that, which is your conscious mind, to have more of an impact on your subconscious thoughts and that alignment. That's what determines, what your outcome is. Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? So it all starts with your thinking processes, your faith, your belief in something greater, your faith. To have faith is so important because when you have faith, you believe in the unknown.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the transformation, though, and how much of it, because it sounds like part of it is a purely intellectual exercise.
Yes.
And it sounds like another part of it is much more emotional. Mm-hmm. And maybe help me understand how you think about those two ingredients, the intellectual and the emotional, and maybe what's different in how you help guide people on the intellectual side versus how you help guide people on the emotional side.
So, very good question. Thank you for asking. So, on the intellectual side, your intellect has a lot to do with the knowledge that you've acquired because it's intellectual, okay? Your emotions have to do with your human persona because you become a person when you incarnate into a body of flesh and blood, right? Prior to that, we're just energy. Energy doesn't die, it only transforms. So when your intellect is out of alignment with your emotions, you get confusion, insecurity, and patterns of behavior that are predicated on doubt, right? But when your intellect and your emotions tap into that divine frequency, that's when you're guided by the faith that you are of the highest lineage and that you have the power within yourself to create absolutely anything that your mind desires, that your heart desires, and that you intellectually desire. This is why the roadmap to understanding and achieving and manifesting your truest, deepest desires are predicated upon the alignment of your conscious mind, which is what your patterns of behavior that are pre-programmed. You get up every morning, you brush your teeth. You know to do it. You don't think about it. You get up every morning, you take a shower. That's already been pre-programmed. Well, you are also pre-programmed by all the thoughts and ideology of your parents. Mm. So when you start identifying how they thought, it gives you a better idea of what's automatically ingrained in you. And then from there, you can actually learn how to evolve your thinking processes in alignment. And then that's what causes you to evolve, not just change.
So if you're someone who's struggling with something, and I think you're right. I think that when your intellect and your emotions are out of alignment, mm-hmm. that creates a problem. How do you help people figure out whether it's the emotions that have it wrong and the intellect has it right, or vice versa, or maybe they both got it a little bit wrong and a little bit right? How do you help them figure out which of those it is and how to bring them in alignment?
Right. So there's a set of questionnaire that I have my mentees read and answer authentically. And these are questions that I've discovered from reading the great minds and studying the greatest minds of psychology, psychiatry, spirituality, even theology. I mean, I've researched it all. And so I took the best of those processes and I combined them all through my framework in order to identify where a person's intellect might be clashing with their emotions and what they believe in. And so, and it's a way for me to identify what their thinking process is. Because some people tend to presume or assume everything. Some people think they know it all. And so if you don't think the way they think you're wrong. So identifying how people think and what that process is key. So by having my mentees and clients answer these questions, I'm capable of identifying if the disconnect is leaning more towards their inability to perceive through a more evolved perspective. And so this all ties in, and this is a tangent, but it's important you understand.
Sure.
The way in which I identify how to best customize my framework for my clients is by understanding whether they've evolved from the 5 sensory perceptive society, which is that we all feel, hear, taste, touch, and smell, therefore we exist. That's the 5 sensory perception, which has been researched and documented. Then we've evolved as a society into the multi-sensory perception, which is where it was proven, researched, and documented that that string that holds us all together is a frequency of energy. And that frequency of energy is instinctually born in us. It's either the Holy Spirit, the soul, the instinct, the felt sense, the subconscious. So that sixth element that created the society that evolved beyond the realm of the 5 elements into the multisensory perception. What my framework does and what it teaches is how to evolve from the multisensory into the omnisensory. And the quantum omnisensory perception, I've never heard anybody talk about that, but people have worded it differently. And so that's a trademark that I'm in the process of registering as a part of my proprietary process to evolution. And it's understanding your perspective and how you digest information.
So in our society now, I think it's maybe never been more true that a huge percentage of the population view themselves through a victimhood lens. I feel like society in some cases even rewards that victimhood lens. I think that what do they call it? The oppression Olympics, where, someone's like, well, I'm a woman, so I'm oppressed. Well, I'm a gay woman, so I'm more oppressed. Well, I'm a trans woman, so I'm even more oppressed. Or I'm a black trans woman, so I'm more. And so I would imagine that, and I know from my own personal experience, that victimhood lens is really challenging to help people sort of change. Maybe talk a little bit about how you help people transform from a victimhood lens to a personal agency lens where they have control over their lives, and maybe what are there things that you look for that make it clear to you, as much as I'd love to, I don't think I can help this person until they take care
Help
of X.
themselves.
Yeah, and so because my experience is I've met people with a victim lens that are able to change quite well when provided new, better information, and I found people that they're so emotionally invested in being a victim, they don't actually want to let go of that. So maybe talk a little bit about your experience with that and maybe what you look for in terms of the signposts to help you say, yeah, this is someone I can help, or I don't think I can help this person.
So to answer your question about how to evolve beyond victimhood mentality, let me just start by sharing this with you, which is very personal, but it is the facts of my life, okay? From talking to me and hearing the way I speak about my family, you would have never guessed that I suffered incest, I suffered molestation, rape, psychological, and emotional abuse throughout my life's journey. What has helped me is the fact that growing up, what was instilled in me was that you hold on to those qualities of being a human being that make you exceptional, like having integrity and dignity and honor and compassion and empathy. When you start with a solid base like that, what ends up happening is you realize that you should never judge anyone. That's not, having an opinion about people is one thing, but when you judge them, you're putting yourself as if you're better. And who the hell ever told you that you were better? It's one thing when you know who you are, but when you know who you are and you use it to victimize people or to oppress people, then God bless you and the horse you rode in on, buddy, because that's just not conducive to good outcomes, right? So I chose, instead of being a victim, I chose to seek therapy at the age of 19 when it all came to a head for me. And I realized through therapy how psychology works and how important it is to understand what you're thinking and why you're thinking, and then how you're thinking that. So when you understand how you perceive things, you begin to open up yourself and you learn, because there are books to teach you how to get out of that victim mentality. And so I made the conscious decision to be better and to refuse to be broken and to refuse to allow what happened to me. I mean, with all due respect to my parents, and God bless them, right? I mean, they did the best that they could with the resources they had, right? But my dad was the one who perpetuated the incest and the molestation. Now, you would have never imagined that, by the way. I speak with him because I left the bad and I took the good. And that is up to us. We have the power to do that.
Right.
You know, if you want to hold on to all that pain and anguish, you need to go deep inside of yourself. And there's several books that I can refer to you to read that helped me to evolve, that can help you to evolve. One of those books, a brilliant book that I read, is by Gary Zukav, The Seat of the Soul. And that is what allowed me to manifest my evolution from the 5-sensory perception into the multi-sensory perceptive society, because victimhood is a characteristic trait of a lack of your knowledge to be better. So where there is a will, there is a way. You can Google. We have AI now.
Well, I want to double click on that a little bit. So I want to make sure I understood. You see, you said victimhood is, and then because I don't think I got it, but I want to make sure that, because I think it's really insightful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So victimhood is the lack of understanding how to change your paradigm.
Okay.
So when you have this victimhood, it's a characteristic trait of the pre-programmed thinking processes and information that has been downloaded into you by your family, environment, or circumstances. So if you want to change your victimhood, you need to understand your paradigm. Once you understand what a paradigm is and how to change your paradigm, then you have the ability to evolve beyond victimhood and take the good of what you learned from that and what caused you to become a better human being, and understand that you are capable of leaving behind and detaching your psyche and from your emotions that are holding you back in that mindset.
So let's be concrete. And I actually think, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm glad you shared it with everybody, because I think that one of the things that's really useful, you know, as weird as it might sound, is to be like, if anyone has the right to claim victimhood, it would be you, and you choose not to, which is fantastic, because I would argue that doesn't get you anything, right? There's no upside to that other than, I don't know, some people do like to wallow, I guess, but let's take an example of, you know, someone who's, you know, physically abused by their partner. Let's just use that as an example. So when you say, you know, someone shifting their paradigm in that example, what would that look like?
God, the first thing that just came to my mind is an experience that I had with my second husband,
Right.
where he actually hurt me physically.
Right.
And when he slapped me so hard that I went flying and landed on the bed, I remembered we had a 9mm Glock.
Right.
So I reached over to my nightstand. It was actually his nightstand, and I pulled out the gun. I pointed at him. I said, "Do you want to do that again?" I picked up the phone. I called 911. I said, "I have a gun to my husband's head. He's beating me.
Right.
You either come here. I will keep this gun on him until you get here. I'm not going to shoot him unless he comes at me again. But then it's self-defense."
Right.
So I have a deep, profound understanding and knowledge of what it is to be victimized. Okay. But what was the question again?
No, but you were saying that and I think there's wisdom in this, which is you're saying if you are victimized, right, something bad happens to you outside of your control, that you're the way you get out of that and take agency back is changing your paradigm. Exactly. And so I guess that's why I was asking for the example. So in your case, you went from victim to aggressor? Is that the change in paradigm?
I went from victim to defender because I was defending myself.
Oh, clearly.
Because I was never aggressive towards him.
Well, I just mean like I'm just saying that.
I'm very literal.
Yeah, I know.
You know that.
You clearly were defending yourself.
Yeah.
But, a gun is an aggressive instrument.
Yes,
That's
it is.
really what
It is. Oh, I get it. It's also a very defensive instrument when used properly.
Well, and we are in the stand your ground state.
Amen. Thank the good Lord for that.
Well, so is that what you mean by shifting your paradigm? So, I was a victim, now I'm defending myself.
Yes. Well, yes. And it's like I said, it all starts with your paradigm. You have to understand what a paradigm is. And how do you identify your paradigm? Well, you first need to understand what a paradigm is. And a paradigm is a shift that evolves you from one thinking process into another, a more evolved thinking process that happens through alignment of your conscious and subconscious minds.
So maybe this is a lack of understanding
Research,
of the words, but like when I think about paradigms, I think about, if someone say, well, gee, Dave, what's the paradigm you see things through? I actually usually think of the word lens. Like, what's the lens I look at something through? Like a camera lens.
That's more of a perspective. See,
Okay.
a lens is a perspective because
Okay.
you see things from a different perspective.
Right.
Right? So a paradigm is the alignment. It's actually the alignment of your conscious and subconscious minds. Because what you've done is by aligning your subconscious mind, which is connected to divine frequency, you begin to pre-program your conscious thinking side of your brain to connect with that insight, to connect with that level of instinct, to connect with that certain knowingness that you know is true, because there's that frequency of energy that vibrates inside of you that affirms that you're doing the right thing. I mean, we all know when we're doing something sleight of hand or something negative or something that's trying to get something over somebody.
Right.
There's that voice inside of us. There's that frequency of energy that exists that lets us know maybe you shouldn't go down that road on a dark evening. And you follow that instinct and you go a different road, and later you found out somebody was mugged or raped there.
Right.
That is alignment from the conscious and subconscious mind. So a paradigm shift is understanding that nothing in your life will change until you understand your own paradigm. And how do you connect to that frequency?
So in your example of, your husband hitting you and then you defending yourself, what was the paradigm shift you made?
Well, I believe in that subconsciously. Okay, this goes really deep. But I had no memory of the abuse that I suffered at the age of 3 or 4 or 5. I didn't have a memory, and I've researched this, and I understand that the mind has a special way of your psyche allows you to separate certain memories in order to protect yourself, right? So I was really blessed in that respect that they didn't, all these thoughts of and memories and feelings of abuse came back to me when my dad tried to rape me again at almost 15. Only I was bigger and I could fight him off, and I screamed. So but imagine the shock of feeling that abuse. That's horrible. I knew at that time, I asked for forgiveness for him, because I knew that that was a bad thing that he was doing. But inherently, I think I've always been connected. And that is my purpose in this life, is to teach others how to connect. Because I genuinely believe this is something that I was pre-programmed with from birth that I didn't even know I had until I started leaning into it and studying and researching.
Well, maybe then if for you it was more innate, it sounds like, how do you help someone else, and let's say that was in that same situation as you or a similar situation to you, how do you help them make that paradigm shift? And what does that process look like?
So after the questionnaire and understanding their thinking processes, I then customize how I'm going to teach them and educate them. More than teaching, it's more educating them in the 3-pillar framework, which consists of your vision, your intuition, and your perspective. This is the framework that I've created. And I've created it bringing into the element of quantum physics and quantum entanglement, which allows one to collapse time, space, and matter. Now, it's a whole different level. I'll get into that when I launch my other book. But right now, keeping it in lay terms, it's teaching them the process of how they can evolve the way they perceive others, the way they envision themselves, the way they envision others, the way they intuitively connect with their higher self, with their instinct, it lands on their intuition. And because every single human being that I've ever spoken to that doesn't even believe in God or doesn't believe in anything greater, they all agree that there's something inside of them that lets them know when they're doing right and when they're doing wrong. And that it has prevented them from maybe encountering dangerous situations in their lives. So when you teach people how to envision themselves by connecting to their higher self, then you guide them to their intuitive sense, using that vision of themselves into connecting with their instinct, their spirit, their consciousness, their subconscious mind. And then by aligning those two forces, I teach them how to evolve their perspective to see through what I call, as you explained it, a lens that I call Quantum Omni perspective, because that is tapping into the alignment of divine frequency. So you have all-knowing knowledge. When you connect to divine frequency, you actually tap into that frequency of knowledge, intuition, and vision that is divine.
Yeah, I do think intuition has some kind of divine connection. It just must. Like you said, I think you always know what the right thing to do is. You just don't always do it.
Right, because of your characteristic traits of your persona.
Yeah, right.
And that was, like I said, that was pre-programmed in your life. So it's really interesting how understanding how people think and that process enlightens you to better identify the characteristics of those pre-programmed attitudes that your characteristic and persona was pre-programmed with. Right. You actually begin to identify because your perspective evolves into a brighter, clearer lens.
Well, so talk a little bit about, because I just from knowing you, off camera before, we obviously have been to a bunch of events together, and also just knowing some of your story, clearly forgiveness is something that you are good at. Maybe talk a little bit about forgiveness and maybe just how you view it as a core component to being able to live a happy life, and maybe also how it fits into Quam.
Okay, thank you for that question. Wow, brilliant. This is probably the best podcast interview I've ever been on, so thank you for that. I sincerely appreciate it. Okay, so forgiveness. Let's just start with the basic, fundamental, right? And interestingly enough, I do not believe in any form of organized religion as my source, okay, for evolving. I appreciate the intent of religion, okay, which is created by the few to control the masses. But there's a solid base and a foundation of goodness, of being wholesome, of always being benevolent. That's what I believe most religions have in common. So if you just take the scriptures, okay, and it says, forgive as you will be forgiven. So as you forgive, you will be forgiven. Okay, well, seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open. Asking you will be answered. So I really took all those into heart because that was what my mother instilled in me, right? And so with that understanding that I have in my belief system, okay, I've realized that, number one, it's not my place to judge anyone because I don't believe I'm better than anyone. I believe I'm more evolved and more connected and more in alignment. But that is a perception. That is not predicated on judging. Because judging means, remember, it means you think you're better than anybody else.
You're evaluating, not judging.
Yes, exactly. Right. And so through my perspective and my faith system and my belief, I inherently believe that the scriptures are real. That part of the scriptures I have found to be real in my life. Not all written text or content is scripture. And the fact that it is scripture is a person's rendition of what they were so moved to document. It wasn't like, they say God speaks to you, you feel him. Sometimes you hear him. And I understand that. But for me, forgiving starts with your faith and believing that it's not your place to judge others and understanding the difference between judgment and having an opinion. And because I know I'm not perfect, and because I've made mistakes in my life that I now realize were just life learning experiences that made me a better human being, because I left the bad, I learned the lesson, and I evolved from that. So to forgive for me is to make a mistake and know that I will be forgiven too, because I forgive others. So it kind of goes back to that, do unto others as you want to have done unto you. So the idea of forgiveness is primary in understanding how to evolve. Because until you understand that if you don't forgive, it's like a self-punishment that your subconscious and your conscious mind your conscious mind has been taught that you're constantly thinking of whatever it is that interests you the most or that you haven't resolved.
Right. I think it was Aristotle or some famous philosopher that said hatred only harms harms the person that has the hatred, not the vessel over which it's poured.
Exactly. And that is, what I'm sharing with you has been taught and talked about for centuries. It's just a different way to communicate because I was born in a different generation that maybe has the opportunity to articulate things differently. But what I'm saying basically is forgiveness, faith, and understanding, compassion, and empathy. All those things go in to formulate how you perceive things and how you grow and how you evolve. So forgiveness is extremely important. For me, it's been easy to forgive because since I was a little girl, I always wanted to be really good. And I mean, I was a virgin until I got married, for crying out loud. How many people do you know that can actually say this in our times? Because I always wanted to do good. It's just it's an inherent quality that I have. I've never in my life made a decision with the intent ever of harming anything or anyone. It just goes without, it doesn't fit into who I am. So understanding that it's always right to do the right thing.
Right.
Not just because it's the right thing for you, but because it's the right thing depending on your relationship with the divine creator.
Got it. So maybe we talked about one of your more challenging clients. Maybe talk about your best success story. And kind of what were the ingredients that allowed that person to be able to benefit from your guidance?
Okay, so the first one that pops into my mind is I met this beautiful young lady who is a quantum theta healer. She is certified in Reiki and first Reiki and second level Reiki. So she is a person who dedicates her life to help people transforming. And yet she came to me because while she was helping people transform through cleansing their spirit and cleansing themselves, through her practices of theta healing, she found herself thinking about things that were bothering her. And so there was a disconnect. How could she really heal this person if she's not in alignment with what she's teaching them to heal? So what I was able to do through the Quantum Mindset was I was able to teach her how to, 3-step process, how to consciously become aligned with your subconscious mind and divine frequency. And as soon as I explained to her the process, she felt a little overwhelmed in the beginning. But because I understood how her thinking process worked, I tapped into explaining to her how this process works for everybody. It's just about how you understand it and perceive it. And so my greatest reward in helping her was when she was able to wake up every morning and, do her meditation. There's a little process. You meditate in the morning. You say your affirmations. You actually write them down. And this is something that I had a challenge with because I would always say them, but my life didn't become transforming, so I started documenting them. And there's something about that process of writing that really is essential to our evolution. So my greatest case was being able to help somebody that helps others in such a benevolent way that her practice was going to pay it forward to humanity by helping others. And so that is my purpose. And I believe that when you are inherently wanting to do good by other people, then you spread that love, and it just quantifies your ability to do that more easily and more frequently and touch more people.
Well, that's wonderful. So as we look to wrap up here, I want you to talk a little bit, because I think it's core to what you do. I think it's core to people being able to be successful, to be happy, to even appreciate their success is the ability to have gratitude. And you've talked about it a little bit, but maybe talk about gratitude, how you think about gratitude as sort of a prime mover in your life and the people that you try to help.
So the first thing is I've pre-programmed my subconscious and conscious minds in alignment with divine frequency and identify that I have consciously chosen to live in an attitude of gratitude. And when you say these things to yourself, from the first moment you open up your eyes, this is why I said the first thing I do is give thanks for my life, for the ability to live, for the ability to think the way I do, for having the physical ability to be able to live my life in a healthy way. But that all is predicated on choice. Unless you choose to live with an attitude of gratitude, you begin in the morning, from the moment you open your eyes, to think of all the things you got to do. And then, of course, you start thinking about how you're going to get them done. And then you get involved with, oh, no, what could go wrong? Well, it's your choice to direct your thoughts. And how do you do that? By programming your intentions. So it's an attitude of gratitude. It's the pre-programming of your intentions. And then it's the manifestation through your actions, which is choice.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So I know you have a lot of projects going on at the moment. Where can people find you and where can they find what you're doing?
Thank you so much for asking. So you can reach me at claudialorant.com, which is CLAUDIA. And my last name is spelled L as in Larry, O as in Oscar, R as in Ralph, A as in Alpha, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, Lorant. So claudialorant.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, and especially Substack. And my website, you just go to my website or just Google my name, for crying out loud. All
You're
you
everywhere.
have to do, I'm everywhere. Just put in Google Claudia Lorant and it'll all come up. And I more recently developed my resource page on my website where I'm giving away, the principles and the framework of the Quantum Mindset. And it really gives you the initial understanding of how you can begin to shift your paradigm through your thinking differently. And so there's a ton of resources on my website that you can tap into and then read them and learn them at your own, at your own pace. And then when you're ready, sign up to my community. And I've got courses, I've got webinars, workshops, masterminds, 6 and 12-week courses for people that want to join my community that are really serious about shifting their paradigm and understanding the framework to doing so.
So ClaudiaLorant.com, check it out. Claudia, thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you, and blessings to you. I appreciate you, and I know your impact in the world is so strong that you should know that because it's changing lives. So
Thank you, Claudia. Great to have you.
Thank you so much. Bye.